The liberal feminist argument has been that you must have sex like a man if you want to be a good feminist. Ladies, I tried this. Read my book, The Fuck List. It is just a lot of BS. And that's why I'm such a huge fan of Louise Perry and her books. This is kind of an addendum to a new guide. It's called A New Guide to Sex in the 21st Century. And if you go to the playlist, you can find the other chapters I've made on this book. We're now in chapter 4, Loveless Sex is Not Empowering. But this chapter is really about how men and women are different and how women have been sold this myth that we're empowered by having sex like men who can easily have loveless sex because they're designed to be able to do that, okay? She starts the chapter by giving the example of Carrie Bradshaw in Sex and the City. This was a show that was popular in the 90s. If you're really young, you may not know the show, but I never liked the show. I thought the ladies were very superficial. But in one episode, Carrie Bradshaw decides she's not going to look for Mr. Perfect anymore. So she hooks up with an ex-boyfriend, someone she calls a creep, and she doesn't even like him anymore. So she enjoys his offer of oral sex and then leaves before he's had a chance to get off. And then she delights in this. She says, quote, "As I began to get dressed, I realized that I'd done it. I just had sex like a man. I left feeling powerful, potent, and incredibly alive. I felt like I owned this city. Nothing and no one could get in my way." And that is an example of how the feminists see empowered women, frankly. That's what they want us to be. They want us to have sexual freedom by having loveless sex with men that we don't like and who don't care about us. Carrie shows no regard for his emotions and discards him immediately after sex. That's kind of what guys do, don't they, in hookups? The purpose of the encounter is physical gratification and psychological dominance. That's what sex like a man is. It means having sex like an asshole. But liberal feminists tell us that this is the way to have sex so that we can free ourselves from expectations, old-fashioned expectations. Louise Perry says that this is basically treating people as objects in the pursuit of your own physical satisfaction. And if you see that men and women are the same, except for that maybe we were raised differently with different expectations, then, and hang-ups, sexual hang-ups from a sex-negative culture, why wouldn't you want women to do that? I'm actually going to say that why don't men try to have sex like a woman? Why is it that we women should try to have sex like a man? Why shouldn't men have sex like a woman? This kind of goes to the first chapter we talked about in this book, where women, instead of being subservient to men in the kitchen like they were in the 50s, we're now encouraged to be subservient to them in the bedroom. Because while there are a few women who love hookups, maybe 5 or 8% of the population, the majority of women don't like them and don't benefit from them at all. Let's continue. Now we're going to talk about sociosexuality, which I've mentioned before in one of the videos in this series. Sociosexuality means that men, in general, as a group, enjoy casual sex more. They like casual sex more. They like more things. They like more variety. They can have loveless sex. They're physically and psychologically different from women. We are not the same. Liberal feminists tell us that we're the same, but we're not the same. Now, sociosexuality, this is kind of how you can measure sociosexuality. With how many different partners have you had sex in the past year? With how many different partners have you had sexual intercourse without having an interest in a long-term committed relationship with this person? Do you agree that sex without love is okay? Do you only want to have sex with a person when you are sure that you will have a long-term serious relationship? Or I'm going to add, care that they call you again and don't blow you off. Now, you've probably heard of the different kind of like things, studies or memes where on college campuses where you have like 100 women go up to a man and offer casual sex and 100 men go up to a woman and offer casual sex, and none of the women want to have the casual sex, but most of the men do. You've probably seen that. The great majority of men are willing to have sexual liaisons with a strange woman who approaches them, but women are not. I mean, we're obviously different. Now, some of the feminists say that's because we're raised in a sex-negative culture. It's societal, it's the environment, it's how we were raised. But this doesn't account for the fact that women are also pickier on dating apps. I mean, perhaps you could say that we're taught to be pickier from childhood, but there's also another big difference is that women have a bigger ick factor, an ick factor. And women's ick factor is much lower than a man's. An ick factor is anything that gives us sexual disgust. You know, for us, it could be a guy's breath or anything. A lot of guys they're not as picky as we are. We're a lot more picky in who we want to fuck. And in general, when women do hook up, they're going to choose a man that they would actually date. Women will choose a man that they would actually date. And I think this is where we can see the real difference that I don't think is societal, is that most women look for the same criteria in their partners, whether it's for short-term or long-term dating. They typically look for the same qualities in a hookup as they do in a husband. David Buss, the evolutionary psychologist, says, in both cases, women want someone who's kind, romantic, understanding, exciting, stable, healthy, humorous, and generous with his resources. They want men who are tall, athletic, and attractive for dating or hookups, let's say. But for men, they don't really care that much. For men, they're very choosy when it comes to a wife or a girlfriend. But for a hookup, they'll choose just about anyone. I'm exaggerating, but they will fuck a 4 if the 9 isn't available. So that is a huge difference. And there's also a huge sexual double standard in that men are less likely to want a woman who has had a lot of sexual partners or who has an OnlyFans. And that's also biological. It's called the mate guarding instinct, because that helps them assure them that this woman has not been impregnated by another man. It's kind of a biological instinct that men have, that they prefer a woman who has had fewer sexual partners or a woman who is not as, promiscuous. So when looking for a long-term partner, anonymous surveys suggest that the vast majority of straight men prefer to choose a wife with a limited sexual history and little interest in casual sex. Whereas women want that too, but women don't care as much if a man has had a sexual past, but men care more if a woman has had a sexual past. Again, that's not necessarily how men were raised. It's just how we're different. But when it comes to hookups, men don't mind an extensive sexual history. In fact, the more promiscuous the woman, the more interested they're going to be. Casual sex has very low risks for men because they have a high sexual disgust threshold. It's going to take a lot for them to be turned off by a woman offering them sex. That the high sexual disgust threshold, a natural interest in sexual variety, no risk of pregnancy for themselves, no fear of slut shaming. So the liberal feminist narrative, having sex like a man, provides comfort for any man who thinks that whose conscience might trouble him. So hookup culture is a terrible deal for women, but feminists have been telling us that this is a kind of a liberation. But a real feminist would not require women to give up our preferences to please men. A real feminist would demand that in the straight dating world, it should be men, not women, who adjust their sexual appetites. And I love that. I'm going to say this again because it's so important. The feminists who tell us that we're liberated by having sex like men are not truly feminists, really. A true feminist would be on the side of women and encourage men to adjust their sexual appetites to suit women. And women generally want their sex in a relationship with commitment, with love and affection, with a guy who will call them back. Now, some feminists have realized that women do want this emotional connection, so they have a solution. Suppress your emotions. Don't feel anything. They tell you and write articles how to overcome your perfectly normal and healthy preference for intimacy and commitment with titles like How to Biohack Your Brain to Have Sex Without Getting Emotionally Attached. Some of the tips they give you is don't have eye contact during sex. Don't have alcohol because that seems to help women bond prematurely. But really what they're telling us is that they're asking women to cripple themselves emotionally in order to gratify men. So to suppress your emotions, and you have to suppress your emotions to have casual sex. Ladies, we have to cripple ourselves emotionally in order to gratify men. Now, because of this liberal agenda has permeated our culture, it's now expected from women that they kiss a guy on the first date. I've seen the comments on the videos. Some guys are like, if she doesn't kiss me on the first date, I'm out. I think you should be very weary of women who are willing to kiss you on the first date. I think that's kind of a red flag, actually. But hookup culture is now the normal expectation, and so some women go along with it, even though that's not what they really want. And that's why books like this and videos like I'm making are so important. Studies have found that following hookups, women are more likely than men to experience regret, low self-esteem, and mental distress, and most of the time they don't even orgasm. Let's talk about the pleasure principle. Orgasms, if you want to take that as one indicator of pleasure. Female pleasure is rare during casual sex, and I will tell you that for women, sex is better in a relationship when they feel safe and connected and loving back and forth with their partner. I think that for men, sex is the same, whether they're in love or not, but men will put more effort into the sex with the woman that they love and care about. They will try harder to please her. They will remember what she likes. In casual sex, that's unlikely to happen. Men in casual relationships are just not as good at bringing women to orgasm. Only 10% of women orgasm in casual sex, compared with about 70% of women in long-term relationships. So this sexual liberation is giving women a lot of unpleasant, crappy sex out of a sense of obligation to please the male drive for sex, to go under the false feminine ideology of if we can be like men, then we're free. Are we really? And it took me a few years of trying the sexual revolution after my divorce to figure out the harms, the emotional harms of it. So that's why I love this book so much. And I think a lot of women are also suffering from this. They're unaware, especially young women are unaware that men are in general much better suited to emotionless sex and find it much easier to regard their sexual partners as disposable. So women often cannot distinguish between being desired and being held in high esteem. It feels like affection, it feels like interest, it feels like he likes you, it feels like he desires you. But after he comes and he has this refractory period, He's out of there, and you're unlikely to ever hear from him again. Unless, of course, he's calling you for the next booty call. Does that feel good? For a typical woman, no, it's heartbreaking. So my own experience with casual sex is if the sex was really great and he never called me again, I was devastated. But most of the time, the sex was very lousy. Most men are not that good in bed, especially if you have no feelings for them and haven't built like a relationship with them. That's just my opinion. Read my book, The Fuck List, which I will put the title in the description. It's on Amazon, to read what that was like for me. Now, men may also not realize that women don't benefit from this. The men that I've talked to, they realize by around the age of 30, late 20s, early 30s, that this casual sex culture that they've also been indoctrinated in doesn't benefit women, that women are likely to get attached. So they also learn this from their own experience because they've grown up in a culture where like the songs, the pop culture, the songs and the movies are all about having sex like a man. I think there's a song from WAP, Megan Thee Stallion, where she talks about that, like the songs, the pop culture, and it's presented as a form of female sexual empowerment. Men also see in porn, which they're actually sadly exposed to from childhood on, that women are shown begging men for painful and degrading sex acts. And when young men start having sex with women, they will encounter women who are also schooled by this porn and pop culture, who hide their distress, fake their orgasms, and work hard to avoid catching feelings. I'll tell you from my own experience, one of the things I tried really hard to do when I had very bad sex in my marriage. Like, it was bad. So I was trying to experiment for my own self. I wasn't looking for like a boyfriend at the time. But if the sex was good and I wanted to see him again and he didn't contact me, I would feel so heartbroken. I thought there was something wrong with me. And I'm like, okay, I have to figure out how to not get attached like these guys, to have sex that was sober, connected, affectionate, and just be willing to just forget about them. Just really be in the moment. Almost like a tantra practice. It was almost like I was abusing myself. It was almost like saying, how much neglect can I handle to show that I'm strong and competent? You know, I didn't know any of this till I came across these types of books. We have to get the word out. I finally realized for myself, the fact that I have feelings is good, and I'm not made for this hookup stuff. I came to that realization on my own. But anyway, because men are also raised in this culture and they're taught that it's female empowerment to have sex, with women and then just discard them, they assume that women don't mind being a good time only. They're taught that's what women want. She gives a story in here about a guy. I'm going to go ahead and tell you the story. I guess this will be a longer video. This is, she copies this out of a relationship subreddit. This is the guy saying, I was hanging out with my friends with benefits on Thursday after work. We had been hooking up for 6 months. I was heating us up some food and she started asking about what I look for in a long-term girlfriend. I told her that I want someone successful and someone that I think would make a good mom. She starts then talking about how she has those qualities and how I see how this conversation is going, so I change the topic. She brings it up and starts asking me what should she focus on to be the kind of girl guys want to marry one day. I told her she's fine the way she is. She just needs to find the right guy. She asked me why I don't want to date her down the road when I am looking for something. I told her that she's great, but she isn't really girlfriend material in my eyes. She started crying like crazy after that. I don't know what was going on. We never had a thing. She never talked about having feelings or anything. Oh my God. Can you relate? Are you puzzled? Are you bewildered? Louise Perry writes, this man seems to be genuinely bewildered by the fact that the woman he has been having sex with for many months is unhappy. And the woman seems to have drifted into this arrangement, not realizing how little regard her partner really has for her. Let that sink in. This is a tragedy of mutual incomprehension. The fact that a man wants to have sex with a woman is not an indication that he wants to have a relationship with her, and that's why she recommends holding off on having sex for at least the first few months. And I think holding off on a kiss too until you feel like you really like this guy. A kiss is not an obligation. Some men use it as a test. If you need to have a test, I don't want to date you. I think that's kind of lame, but this is why it's good to hold off on having sex. So first of all, you're going to filter out the guys who just want to hook up. Second, you get a chance to know the guy to see if this is someone you really want to have sex with. And third, you're less likely to catch feelings and have an emotional connection too quick, so it's easier for you to spot red flags. Now, she also talks about agreeableness. That's another difference between men and women. Women in general tend to be more agreeable, more nice. I know there are many women who are like cold, bitchy narcissists, but in general, women score higher in a trait called agreeableness. And that has been known by researchers that women are much more agreeable than men. And agreeable people put their own interests last, more likely, and they think the best of people against the evidence. So agreeable people are particularly vulnerable to being taken advantage of by disagreeable people. So since women are more agreeable than men, women are more likely to be taken advantage of by men because they're agreeable. And she says a good test, and this is great because this is a test I always talk about on my channel. Instead of asking, would this man make a good boyfriend for me, ask, would this man make a good father for my children? Whether you want children or not. Because when you think about something outside of yourself, you're more likely to have some empathy. Because some people don't have enough empathy for themselves. They're like, would he make a good boyfriend for me? They'll overlook things. But would he make a good father for my children? They're able to be a lot more objective. If he wouldn't make a good father, don't have sex with him. And that is a really, really good test. Yeah. And also, if he wouldn't call you back after sex, like, what is that? Ghosting someone after you had sex with them? That's just mean. That's sociopathic in my opinion, but that's what people do. Okay. We will never be able to have sex like men because we will never be men. Despite modern contraception and other technology giving us the illusion of sameness. We can never have sex like men because we're not men. So I look forward to the comments on this video. I think this is a huge thing. I've also been kind of aware that there are more societal shifts, like more people joining the church, more people wanting to wear like more modest clothing. People are kind of like, this sexual thing has not benefited us at all. Women are saying, this wasn't really working the way that we were taught it would. We're realizing that we are different. We're not benefiting from this. So, thank you so much for watching the video. The other videos will be in the playlist for a new guide to sex in the 21st century. Thank you for watching.